Okay. Thinking about states such as Michigan or Illinois, what kind of future do they have? Aren't they completely bankrupt? What I mean is that the local governments aren't able to pay their bills anymore. What kind of future effect will that have on those regions?
Well, it'll be devastating. It'll be good because it'll finally cut the government spending, but government never stops spending until they're forced against the wall and they renege on their bonds. They borrow as much as they can, they tax as much as they can, and when the host dies, that's when they finally give up. So it's not so much that the stopping of government spending will hurt. It's all the spending that's taken place in the last 50 years that has destroyed these areas. And now we're just in the final months or few short years of that process.
Okay, so let's talk about the US dollar. Many experts see the dollar tanking in the foreseeable future. Do you agree with them?
No, I think the dollar has begun a new bull market. It's a clear five-wave advance that, by my model, says that we've begun a long-term advance. I think the dollar is going to go up throughout the deflationary period, which means for at least 4 years. And that will, of course, confuse everyone. However, because it's got five waves up short term, it's very possible it will have a correction lasting a couple of months in the dollar, and everybody will say it's dead again and it's going to zero. But I believe it's in a long-term bull market because the dollar is the most inflated currency in the world, the most inflated currency in the history of the world, and most of that inflation, by far, 98% of that inflation has been in the form of credit. Credit can disappear and shrink, and it will disappear faster and to a larger extent in the U.S. dollar than in any other currency. And that's why, on a relative basis, the dollars that survive are going to go up in value relative to other currencies.
Okay. When people are talking about the dollar as a doomed currency, don't you think that all the other currencies, such as the pound sterling, the euro, or many other Eastern European currencies, share this fate? Because at the end of the day, all of those nations try to debase their currencies to become competitive again, isn't it?
Yeah, all currencies are bad. There's no currency in the world today backed by real money. So they're all in the same, all going to end up in the same way. And the ones that are mostly the instrument of credit creation will deflate the most. The ones that have opted for currency inflation, such as Zimbabwe and some South American governments in the past, or Germany in 1923, when they start printing banknotes out of thin air, then you get irretrievable inflation. But as long as most of it's credit-based, those are the areas where deflation is going to have the strongest hand.
Okay. From time to time, you hear people talking about the establishment of a world currency. Recently, there was even a program on Fox News regarding this topic. Can you imagine that?
Of course, I can imagine it because there's no limit to the imagination of politicians to uh, gain power for themselves at the expense of everyday people. And that would be a wonderful way for politicians to gather tremendous power uh, and take value not only from their own subjects, but from everybody on the entire earth. So I'm sure it's already been dreamed up. And the only question is if and when it ever happens.
Okay, so this is also associated with the establishment of a world government. What do you think?
Um, I'm not going to make predictions about that. It's going to be, I think the trend for the next 7 or 8 years, if not longer, will be toward uh, the devolution of governments. After that, there may be centuries in the future when politicians will try to create world governments. But for the moment, I think what's going to happen around the world is that people are going to start rebelling against the governments they have and demanding that they do less and that they break up or that they separate from them. So those are the themes to look for. Government's going to try to very hard to take more and more control, but I think people are also going to react very strongly against that desire.
Mhm. So I know that you are a gold bug. but you predicted that gold and other precious metals would once more come under pressure and perhaps drop to 600 an ounce again in the case of gold. Do you stick to that opinion by taking into account the relatively small market and the high demand for the metal?
Yes, because if we go into deflation, or when we go into the deflation, gold is going to go down just as it did in 2008. However, gold did not go up as much as many other commodities, such as oil or platinum or uranium. They went up many more times than gold did. So gold is playing a bit of a catch-up game now, and it's possible that it might even have a blow-off very similarly to some of those commodities I just mentioned, what happened in 2008 to them, before plummeting. For example, oil went all the way up to $147.50 a barrel before it had the biggest decline in any commodity in history over 5 months. It dropped 78% down to 33.5. So gold, if it does go up, will probably be the focus of one of these very strong commodity moves, but it'll eventually come back down to reflect the deflationary pressures that are coming. It's not so much that I'm trying to call the gold market. I'm merely saying that it's not going to go up very strongly until the deflationary cycle ends. It's going to have its little bull markets. It's going to have bear markets along the way, but it won't be a candidate for a repeat of the 1970s until the deflationary cycle ends. And I don't see any chance of that happening before 2016.
Okay, and when this cycle ends, yeah, what do you think? Is there a possibility for seeing hyperinflation, or yeah, or many people say, wow,
Yes,
yeah,
I wrote in my book Conquer the Crash that would be the time to be concerned about it. It doesn't mean it must happen, but that would be the time when governments might get together in a panic and decide to start cranking the banknote printing presses, like Federal Reserve notes. If the government takes over the Fed, for example, and starts printing these banknotes. But government is very slow to react. I seriously doubt that will happen before the bottom. Uh, Once the stock market and the economy bottomed way back in 1932, 1933, silver went up sharply. I believe it tripled in the next few years, and stocks went up 5 times in 5 years from 1932 to 1937. So once the deflationary cycle is over, you're going to see a rebound in everything.
yeah, that was
Whether
my
that turns into hyperinflation, we'll just have to wait and see.
okay, that was my next question. How do you see silver in this context? So the gold-silver ratio has reached a historical high. Could also silver come under pressure again? I think so, if deflation should hit
Yeah,
markets
sure.
again. Yeah. So that
Absolutely. Now, silver has probably been the worst performing commodity in the last 30 years. It got to $50. It's still only $18 an ounce. Unbelievably poor performer, despite the fact that we've had 30 years of continuing inflation. So I wouldn't want to be overly dogmatic, but the deflationary cycle will not be kind to silver prices. Whether it runs up at any time in the middle or not, you still have to wait until the cycle of deflation is over. And I think you'll be able to buy every type of commodity more cheaply than you can today.
okay, a lot of mining concerns, including Barrick Gold, as well as other junior exploration companies, have said that peak gold isn't that far away from now. How do you see this?
Are these the same people that told us we had peak oil?
Could be. I don't know. I'm talking about Barrick Gold,
Uh,
for example.
oh, I don't understand the question. Peak gold to me means that uh, we don't have enough in the earth. It's going to go to $1 million. That's what they said about oil.
Right.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I think so.
Barrick is a mining company, though, so I'm not sure what you mean there.
So, what I mean, what do you think about this? Yeah, are we far away from peak gold, or is it just a hype? Yeah, let's say. Yeah, people talking about
Yeah, it's
this all
hype.
day. Yeah.
Yeah, gold is scarce, and that's a good thing. That's what makes it money.
Mhm.
That's what makes it a very good money. Uh, so, no, the argument of peak oil, peak gold, and all that stuff makes no sense. You want gold to be scarce, but I don't think the Earth is running out of it at any particularly observable rate. Sure, there's a limited amount in the Earth's crust. That's a good thing, but it doesn't mean anything for the next 3 years in terms of gold price. That's just an argument pulled out of thin air because somebody's bullish on inflationary grounds.